Hello, everyone. Happy New Year's to you. And this is the first show that I'm hosting after the New Year's, and I'm so excited to be here. It's supposed to be for the Sunday series, but we are doing it on Monday, 3rd January 2022, 8 p.m. CST. I am really excited to be here to host yet another Sunday series show. And this week we have author Latanya, who is going to be joining us in a bit. So here's a little thing about author Latanya. She is a passionate author who loves to educate and empower others through her stories of triumph. Having had a stressful childhood, she understands what it feels to be in most teenagers' shoes. Despite the challenges she faced, she still managed to become successful in life. Through her first book, My Escape, she encourages teenagers who are living a stressful household or in a bad situation not to give up in life, for there is always light at the end of the tunnel. So Latanya's vision is all about making a difference in other people's lives. She wants to see others winning and taking advantage of the many opportunities that life presents. So she's a certified nurse assistant with 11 years of working experience, and she's committed to a career. She holds an associate degree in allied healthcare. She aims to make the world a better place by spreading love. So now, without further ado, let's welcome author Latanya to the show. I'm really excited to be talking to her today.
Hi.
Hello, Latanya.
Hi, how you doing?
Hello, hello. I'm great. How are you?
Fine.
Awesome. I'm really excited to have you on this show today. It's a Sunday series show, but nevertheless, we are doing this on Monday. I believe you have been working through the weekends, and it was New Year's celebration, and Happy New Year's to you, by the
Same
way.
here.
And yeah, so I have actually briefly introduced yourself a little bit, during the introduction period. But I think, it would be great to have you say a little bit about yourself to the audience. Maybe something that we do not know about yourself. So a little bit about yourself, that would be really great.
Oh, you want me to tell the audience about myself?
Yes, where are you from? A little bit about yourself.
Oh, well, I'm a 32-year-old woman. I'm 32 years old. I'm single. I'm not married. I don't have no kids. I spend most of my time with my family members, my uncle and my sister at most, and I make my sister kids my kids because I'm always around them all the time. So I'm basically, if I'm not working or doing house or chores, I'm around her or my uncle.
Uh-huh, right. So now, coming to your career, I believe that you've been working through the weekends, and which is why we were not able to do it on Sundays. So tell us a little bit about your career, where do you work at, and what do you work as?
Well, right now I work at Fairview Nursing Home that's in Chestnut Hill. I work there. I'm pulled there, so I'm on as needed, but I make my own schedule. So that's why I couldn't do the interview on Sunday because it was my weekend to work at the job. And I've been doing that for 12 years now, going on 12 years. And I really do love caring and helping the elderly people. And I really get attached to them. It's something I really do love doing. I take care of them.
Mhm. Right. So you've been a healthcare certified nurse assistant, and you're into the healthcare industry for 11 years. And I think, especially now since the post-COVID world, it's really terrible out there. So how has it been so far for you? I mean, like, with all this pandemic and things like that. I think healthcare workers are definitely one of the hardest hit professionals out there.
Or how working through the pandemic, but with the working through the pandemic was like actually during since I'm a CNA, it was actually way more hours, and it's like everybody. I know a lot of people said they lost their jobs from the pandemic, but as a CNA, I didn't lose my job at all due to using my job. It's like they needed more of us, and there was more hours available to us, so it didn't really affect my money when it came to the pandemic. Actually, it was more because it was paying people double from working during the pandemic.
Right. And I think it must have definitely been trying times. And I think we still, I mean, we still are, battling with a lot of new variants coming on. And it's really difficult. So, but nevertheless, I think you have a larger than life purpose, which is to spread love, which is to make the whole world a better place, which is to encourage teenagers not to give up in life, right? So, as a child, how was your, childhood, and how did you actually grew up? And tell us a little bit about your childhood.
Oh well, my childhood was difficult because when I was a child, I lived with my mom and my stepdad, and then I had my five siblings living with me, so it was altogether with six of us, and we kind of had a rough childhood living with my mom and my stepdad because we wasn't in the best environment like regular kids should have been in. Is she?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we wasn't in like a tough environment. We wasn't
Mm-hmm.
like going to school. We wasn't doing things that normal kids was supposed to do. And on top of
Mm-hmm.
that, my mom was in her addiction at the time. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
living with a parent that is strung out is the worst because the only thing that comes that's more important to them is they have it. And I did catch up to her and caused me and my six siblings to us to get separated. And me and my sister went to go stay with my uncle and aunt, which was my mom's older sister. And going in that environment, we thought that it was better when we got there at first, but as the years went on, we wound up going into another difficult childhood that we wasn't happy,
Mm-hmm.
and that sent my sister through problems and then sent me through problems too. Because it's like we went through one difficult household, then we had to move to another difficult household.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Right. So I think that you were moving from one house to another house. Um, is it with your parents, or were you like sent to your extended family members' house to be taken care of? Was it like that, or were you moving still as a family, but to different places, and that caused?
Yeah, when I moved there with my aunt and my uncle, my mom, like I said, she's my mom's older sister. We was living a happy childhood at first. We was very happy. We was going to school. We was doing things that normal kids do that we wasn't doing with our mom and my stepdad. And we got to really see how it really was and there were a lot of stuff we didn't know living with my mom and living with my stepdad. But as the years got on, because I was 7 years old when I left my mom and my stepdad house. So by the time I say I got the 9 or 10 living with my aunt and my uncle, then that's when things start to take a turn.
Ah, right. So I think it is the separation from your family unit, right? I think that has, am I right to say that has actually caused
Yeah,
a lot of
it caused
issues?
confusion because when me and my sister got separated from our three brothers and my other sister, and we it's like I don't know what happened as the years went on. We just went years without. At first, when we moved, we was seeing each other like every weekend, but then as the years went on, it would be years and I wouldn't never go see my brothers or see my sister. And it's like, and I never understood like why my aunt or my uncle wouldn't never. say nothing about that or say, do y'all want to go see your brothers or y'all want to go see your sister? And why would y'all let us go so many years and not have us go see our sisters, see my brothers or my sister? Like, and you knew we all grew up together. We was in that house together. Like, and as parents, why would y'all go years and not and let that not happen? So that kind of disappointed
Mm-hmm.
me to a point because I looked at them. You know, we were younger and we didn't know our way around and stuff. And it's like, and when you growing up with somebody, and when you get to a certain age and you never grew up with them, it's like it's good to have a connection when you're younger because if that connection stays strong as you get older. But they broke their connection with my brothers and my sister because they have us went so many years without seeing them, and they never like I don't. They never try to say like, "Let's go see your brothers," or "You want to go see your brothers." And every time we will bring our brothers up, they would never just ignore us and would never say nothing about it.
Yeah, and I think, talking about family separation, I think you were separated from your siblings, and how has that affected you emotionally and mentally as a child? And were you able to reconnect with your siblings after that? And like,
Um, Um, I had dealt with it at first. You know, when you're a child, sometimes you don't know what's going on until you get older, and you don't realize certain stuff until you get older. Because you know, when you're a child, certain things don't pick up until later on in life. So when I started getting the way of how things were, I probably was in my teens at the time, and by that time, I did try to reconnect with my three brothers and my sister, and my other sister, but it's like it wasn't never it was hard to do, and we didn't have that connection because we went so many years without seeing each other. It wasn't there. Like, we know who each other is, but it wasn't a strong connection like I had with the sister that I grew up with.
so I think that is definitely traumatizing to begin with. I think to say that is traumatizing is definitely an understatement. So, and how did you, I mean, amidst all these issues that you were having, what made you resilient, and what made you actually hold on to life and what it has to offer all throughout these years?
Well, I was still able to hold through life through all the things I went through because what I went through made me stronger. I didn't let it stop me from doing what I needed to do. I didn't blame anybody else for what happened because it wasn't nobody else's fault. It just made me stronger, and it made me determined to be something. And I said I'm just going to learn from my past and not learn and move on. So actually, me going through all the tough stuff I went through as a child, it made me a stronger person.
Right, and you actually mentioned that when things were good, you were going to school. You didn't have any issues with school and things like that. So
No, I
yeah,
didn't.
after,
Always did good in school. I always managed to get A's and B's. I was always like on point when it came to school. It never affected my schoolwork at all.
fantastic, but and that is one thing. Like, how do you actually manage to maintain the consistency in school? That's one thing. But I believe since you were moving from one place to another very frequently, it would have you would have had to like cope with different schools or probably different
Oh, when I
subjects.
was living with my mom and my stepdad, we was not in school. My mom didn't allow us to go to school when I lived there, so it's like I never experienced school. I didn't start going to school until I moved with my uncle and my aunt. Well, me and my sister didn't start going to school. My sister started off in the third grade, and she managed to keep up.
Fantastic. And at what age did you start school?
I started school like at 7 and 8, so I was pretty much I started off in the first grade.
So you would not really left out in that case.
Yeah, but I one thing about it, I did when I did start the first grade, I did fail because the first grade because I wasn't able to keep up. My sister was, but I wasn't, so I wound up having to repeat this first grade. But after repeating, then I started doing good.
Ah, right, right. Yes, I think from there you actually picked up on, being consistent and being really, really good at education. So tell us about these are the skills that people lack in life. I think but you as a child who have gone through difficult times, even way before your peers would have actually felt all these difficulties in life. You actually faced it much earlier in life, and I think that gives you sort of upper hand in dealing with life's difficulties. So how did you actually separate your responsibilities from your struggles? Like, despite all these things happening, you still managed to keep up in study. So how did you actually do that?
Like how did I manage to keep up on everything and my responsibilities? Um, Actually, I'm the type of person that I love to learn new things. I love learning.
Mhm.
That was part of me learning,
Mhm.
and that's just something I always like to do. I like to sit up there and I learn, and I like to I always want to. I always was responsible as a child. I like doing what I had to do and taking care of my business and certain things I wouldn't have felt right if I could never did. So it's like that was just always in me to be responsible.
Mhm. Right. And we have your book over here. I'm actually putting up this screen to your
Mhm.
book, which is My Escape, and you have a few ratings over here, and I think you pretty much have a very systematic write up, I believe, because you have, like, key takeaways for mental health. And I think these are really, really important right now, especially for children, because there are way more, troubled households in this world at this point of time, more than, any time ever. So, childhood trauma, and we're talking about so many important aspects that we need to learn, which is, yeah, like, how can you find your way out through emotional maze, right? So which is what I asked you earlier on, and I think a lot of people are struggling with these things. So even as a childhood, even during a childhood, as a child, you managed to navigate through these difficulties. What are the things that you tell yourself, when you're just facing difficult times, and you feel like, not wanting to study, or you feel like you miss your family? How do you cope with those emotions, and make sure that you come back to what you're supposed to do. So how do you do that? And I think a lot of people have difficulties regulating their emotions, but you did that very well, even as a child.
Mhm. Oh, how I would get out like bad situations or if I'm stressed or something like that. What I would do, I will find some. I would have to like probably sit down, relax, calm down, and I would think of other possible what other ways that can stop me from being stressed out, or another way I can go in a direction. Like if I'm stressed, if I'm sitting there and I'm stressed about like how I'm gonna do this, how I'm gonna do that, I just sit down and I relax and I think and I say, you know what, I can do this, then I can do that, and I can go get this done at this time. And that's how I manage to do stuff
Mm,
because I'm trying to think of different ways you can always do stuff.
right. And we have really some really good reviews over here, saying that the author's early life recorded with immense detail, and much of it is unpleasant. So I think it's somebody said it's actually a tearjerker, and that must be really difficult for you to write. Now, coming to your writing journey, when did you realize that you want to be an author and you want to like document all these difficult times that you went through? Tell us about that.
Oh, well, I decided I wanted to be a writer because when my sister, me and her, we see each other on a regular basis. The one I grew up with, we see each other like 2 times a week, and we see each other all the time. And sometimes when me and her talk, we always used to get to the point of talking about our childhood, and we would just talk so much. I just said to her one day, I said, we can write a book about the things that went on in our life, and she said, you know what, we can. But I never thought to take action at the time. But it's like we kept talking about it, and I told her, you know what? How about I write a book about our? I said, let me write a book about our life. And she said, I said, do you mind if I use your name and stuff like that? She said, I don't mind. And she said that she was willing to support me whatever I did. And that's when I got started. And then once I started working on the book, that's it, working on the book, working on the outline, I realized that I like doing that stuff. And I was like, actually, I really love doing this stuff and writing a book about my life and stuff like that. So I said, I think I wouldn't mind doing this on a regular basis. So that's how I basically got started. Like, after the outline and doing the master finished piece of my book, and I read it over myself, and I read it like a lot of times, and I said, "Oh, this book actually came out good," and I love doing the work. I just love the whole concept of it, the breaking down of everything, and then and I said, you know what? I think I can do this on a regular basis. So that's basically how I started, my writing journey by writing my book about my life.
Right, and you really you mentioned over here that you were moving from one house to another, and then things were good for a bit, and then and it goes back to square one, and you had to actually move to another place. So did that actually affect your schooling, your your school life? How was it back then? Like moving from one place to another, and you would have thought that maybe you can stay here longer, but something crops up and you have to move out again. So I believe that you have been in a very stressful situation all throughout your childhood. And when did that end finally?
Oh, you said like how did I still manage to do everything with going to school during that time?
Yes, and I think you moved from one difficult household to another difficult household. How did that affect your school life? Did you change to? Did you move to another school?
Did I drop out? You said did I ever drop out of school?
Did you move to another school when you moved from one house to another house?
Yeah, I moved to another I did go to another school when I left. When you talk about when I finally left the house myself,
Yes.
yes. Um, yeah, I did go to another school, and that's the school I wound up getting my high school diploma. And I only had 1 year I had to do left.
Okay. So how many schools did you move all throughout your? I mean, if you remember.
Well, I went to four schools. I went to my elementary school, which was right up the street from my
Mm.
house. It was Glover Cleveland Elementary School. Then I went to the middle school right up the street from my house too. That was Gillespie Middle School. Then I went to Grants. I made it all the way up to Grants in the 12th grade. Then I left. So I didn't get a chance to finish the 12th grade. But then I got another program after I left, and it was only a year. And I got my high school diploma from there.
Fantastic. And I am actually very curious to ask about anxiety, because you mentioned about anxiety, and having anxiety as a child is really something that's difficult, because I think probably you would be like, thinking, when is the issue gonna crop up? Like, once you moved to a new place, maybe things are all rosy and good in the beginning, but later, you have issues cropping up. So, how do you actually cope with the mental trauma that comes along with it? I think it's really difficult. So, and now as an adult, are you still recovering from the traumas?
Um, Actually, as of right now, no, I'm not. I'm not recovering from it anymore. It took me a while to get over a lot of stuff that happened in my life, but actually not as right now because I do talk to my uncle about a lot of my problems, and he helped me out a lot. And he told me how to deal with certain things in different ways. That's the person like who taught me how to relax, how to look at things in a different way, and how to stay calm in certain situations. So actually, I'm still not recovering from the drama no more because it's like I leave stuff in the past, and you can't change what happened in your past. So I don't want to like wear my past on my shoulder because I look at it when you always wear things on your shoulder and carry it through life. How you going to be able to be happy in the future if you carry the grudges on you? You're not going to be able to move forward. That's in my eyes. If you can't forgive and move on, I will never forget what happened to me or all the things that happened to me, but I have to forgive you because I gotta move on because I want to be happy. And when people hold grudges their whole life, they want to blame other people for their problems or blame the world because they went through something. I don't blame anybody about what happened to me. So with me, I have to forgive to move on to make a better life for myself and be happy.
Right, and you mentioned that you spoke to someone. So was that your coach or someone like that, or like a therapist?
hmm he wasn't. Yeah, he wasn't like talking to him. Actually, was like I didn't know it at the time because he had my uncle had bad things. He had things to talk about, and I had things to talk about. But he was like therapy. He was, and he talked to me about a lot of stuff. He was like my therapist.
Awesome, right? I think having good people around us really helps in terms of coming out of any difficult situation that we are in. And since you have been in touch with one of your sisters very regularly, and I believe that you grew up with her as well. So how is she coping? Like, I think, in terms of how it affects your siblings, it will definitely be a major impact. It would definitely have a major impact on ourselves. So, um, how did she, or probably even if let's say you were coping with the situation better, how do you help her out?
Or how did she manage to go? How did she manage to get through the situation? Hmm? You said how did I manage to help my sister out?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, me and my at first when I left my sister's house, actually me and my sister we didn't I grew up with didn't talk to each other in a couple of years, but me and my sister just recently been talking started got like we always knew each other and was close, but we just stopped talking to her because she went her separate way and I went my separate way, and me and her really was at odds at first. But I think 2018 that's when me and her really got close, and that's when we started we built our relationship, and that's when me and her actually got close. But my sister, she dealt with stuff. My sister had like she didn't deal with it the way I dealt with it. She dealt with it in her own way. She started getting my sister she managed to deal with it by going to church and stuff all the time.
Right. So I think
My sister always started. She started hanging around positive friends, and my sister just dealt with her in her own way.
fantastic. So, but I think both of you kind of like had similar ways to handle with life's difficulties, and probably it has. Since you guys were not really in touch, and that's where you lost the connection. But I think the way that the both of you chose to cope with things, somewhat similar. Uh, and talking about positive friends, and moving out, I mean, like, as an adult now, how did you actually choose your friends, change your environment? Because I think environment definitely plays a crucial role
Yeah,
in,
it does. It,
yeah.
it
So how do you actually change that?
hmm your environment does change that. Like when I started being around like positive people and people like church, like people who was in the church and stuff like that, and more people who seem like
Mm-hmm.
they actually try when everybody trying to help each other out. That's when I
Mm-hmm.
started hanging around a different crowd of people because I'm very careful of who I talk to and who I'm friends with.
Mm-hmm. And it's definitely not an easy thing to find new friends, especially telling that we come from a troubled household and things like that. So um, how do you manage that? Like, when you're seeing a new group of people and you're making friends with them, you're trying to make friends with positive people. How has it been so far for you? Has it been difficult, or has it been like, talking about your past? Was it like, triggering your traumas again?
No. If I meet somebody and we're talking and we become friends and not like their spirit and stuff like that, then I'll be friends with them. They don't um I won't never think about my past when I'm talking to somebody, like trying to be friends with somebody or something like that. If I feel something that's not right about that person, I just won't talk to them. But if I like you and we have a good conversation and we get to talking, and next thing you know we get close, I'll be your friend.
Fantastic. So I think building authentic friendship over here
Mhm.
is what it all matters, and
But when I
building.
seem to pick my friends, it seemed like with me being so young, I'm more attracted to having. I have older friends. I'm always seem like I'm always having older friends.
Okay. So you made a lot of older friends even from your childhood.
Hmm.
Even as a child, you were
So like when I
making
started like working
friends
on my
with.
own and getting out working and being on my own, I started connecting with a lot of elderly people. So they will be my friends because I could talk to them about everything.
Ah, that's really interesting. So I think you owned yourself, and I think that made you who you are today, the confident person that you are today, and you want to make a difference in other people's lives. So, what is the message? I mean, in your book, and when you decided to write the book, what is the motivation behind it, and what are the things that you want to see the book accomplishing?
My book, I just want my people in my book, my message out there is like to tell people, like, even if you're not a teenager in any situations, you can always get out. You don't have to
Mm-hmm.
stay
Mm-hmm.
anywhere. You don't have to deal with certain people if you don't want to deal with them. It's to just help anybody. Mainly, it is for teenagers, but it's also for adults too, because you got adults who probably might go through some of the same problems too. And it might not be the problems I went through. It might be different problems. So my message is just to anybody that
Definitely.
anybody can make it, regardless of what situation you're in.
Exactly. And I think, during the beginning of our interview and right before we went to live, I was actually telling you about this because this is not just about how children can actually navigate through from difficult times, but I think this is also for adults because a lot of adults who grew up in a happy family, right?
Mm-hmm.
Happy family, quote unquote. and they would actually learn about coping mechanisms much later in life, um,
That's
feeling safe
mhm.
with their family members, feeling protected, by their family members, and suddenly, when they are being thrown with real life challenges, I think it can be something really overwhelming as an adult to handle that, and then you learn all how to cope with it. But you learned all these things much earlier in life, and that gave you the advantage, right? So, and you're definitely right to say that this book is probably not just for teenagers, but also for adults out
Yeah,
there struggling
because if I don't read it,
with.
they can say if they had a similar childhood, then they'll know, like, oh, I remember going through this, or I was in a situation similar to this. So it's like also for me, it's for adults too.
Fantastic. And now coming to being with kids from a better family environment, how does that make you feel? Like, as a kid, did that make you feel bad at times? Like wanting to have a family just like them. Um, it must have kind of like triggered a few emotions along the way, like when you're talking to kids from happier families, things like that. So did you face that in your childhood?
That people who had good families. When I say people who have good families, I don't feel bad about. Actually, I'm happy for them. Like if they did have a good family, because I would just say to myself, like, I wish that I had a type of family like that, or I wish I grew up with a family like that. And like I said, we don't get to choose that our life, how it's going to be. But anybody I see who really had a happy childhood, I'm very proud of them. And I just say, I wish that my child was like that, but it didn't. But one day, if I do start to have my own family, then I will try to make it better for my family when I have a family.
Fantastic. And coming to your books, coming to your books over here, anybody, any of your family members and readers who have read this, who have gotten back to you, what was the feedback that you got so far?
So, any feedback I got from my family members? Oh, my uncle, like I said, I had gave my uncle a copy of the book after I finished it for he can read it for himself. And he actually told me, he told me that I was very brave and I had a lot of heart to actually put my book out there and talk about it. He said, because he kind of went to a difficult situation too when he was younger, and he said I don't think I would have the heart to ever talk about my my life
Mm,
story like you did. But
mm,
he said that you have a strong mind. He said he was proud of me.
okay, yes. Um, and you listed down five key takeaways from this book, which is the strength to overcome difficulties, keeping eyes open for the opportunities life gives you, and childhood trauma doesn't define the rest of your life, which is really true, and how you can learn from the past and avoid making the same mistakes in the future, as well as finding a way out of any emotional maze and building a brighter future together. So, is it like a strategic, step by step kind of um, directions that you have given your readers out there, which they can follow and implement in their life?
I'm saying it again.
Do you have you actually listed out, like a detailed step by step plan in order to overcome all these life difficulties in the book?
You said like that. Did I overcome them, or do I want my audience to overcome them?
Have you in the book? Have you written about step by step plans, like how to overcome difficulties?
Yeah, the thing is, I don't know like what works for everybody, but I explain what works for me. I know everything don't works for everybody, but I talk about stuff that helped me out.
All right, right, fantastic. And maybe one of those things that you want to share over here, like maybe this would pique the interest of readers out there who are watching this.
Like one thing that I did to do,
Yes.
that helped me overcome living in well living in a stressful household. One of the things that I did the mainly was keep myself busy and try to stay always kept myself busy, like doing outside activities, playing with my friends, going to the library, doing my homework at the library, just going outside playing activities like basketball, jump rope with my girlfriends, and just being away. Like I did outside activities when I could, and that just cut me away from the stress half of the time.
Right. I think you always kept yourself busy in that really kept you going, probably, avoiding repeated looping thoughts like coming to your mind. And I think that's one of the key things that people need to do in order to come out of difficult situations. If not, I think the mind would go back to what has happened, and it will keep you really stuck, right, in the problems that we are facing. So, what is the one thing that you want to tell readers out there, your message, right before we end the show for today? What is the message that you would like to tell your readers out there, those who are watching this now or probably later on? Um, you know,
My message would be if anybody, any teenagers going through this, or if you was a person who have went through this, I always want to just let you know it's always the way to get out of a situation. You just gotta have a strong mind, and you just really gotta do what it takes to get there. So that's my message to anybody. You don't never have to stay in anything, in any
mhm.
situation that
and
you want to be in.
it can be really difficult to separate yourself from your family, your toxic family members, and that's something really difficult. And you definitely have actually managed to do that really well. And dealing with toxic family members is definitely a difficult thing. And I think seeking help, even from therapists, even from a life coach, someone who is trained to help you out, someone professional, would definitely be able to identify the root cause of the problem. Because if you're attached to the toxic family member, then you will not
Mhm.
be able to,
And that's
you
true.
know,
I
yeah.
look at it when you get rid of the people that's the problems and that's always causing you stress. And once you get them people out your life, you be better and much happier. When you get stressful people out your life, or you get people out your life that's making your life stressful, you have to get that out. If you want to be happy in life and you don't want to go through that, you need to get the negative people out your life.
And even if it is your siblings or your parents, you
Yes.
know.
I had to cut a lot. I did have to cut a lot of my family members off that I grew up with. I didn't want to. It was hard, but I had to do what I had to do if I wanted to be happy. I know a lot of people who can't do certain things that I did because a lot of people just said they need their family, or they just desperate for family. Period. A lot of people couldn't do what I do, but when you get rid of the source of the problem, then you be happier. And that's what I realized about when I cut off my family. I didn't want to do it, but I had to.
Right. And yes, as difficult as it is, I think, dealing with the root cause of the problem will eventually make you happier, and undeniably that has made you who you are today. Fantastic. And thank you so much for your time and It's a pleasure talking to you. I will be putting the interview up on Instagram and also on YouTube, and I really hope that this is helping people out there with troubled households in order to reclaim their life. So, on top of that, I'm also going to be posting the snippets of your interview, um, of this interview on various social media platforms for the next 7 days for people to watch throughout the next 7 days. All the important parts of this interview will be posted up, and I hope that gives you more exposure and also more people to eventually buy a book, visit your website, get to know you more. And here is the website, your website, where people can actually learn more about yourself. So this is this is it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Yeah.
you have your website over here, and it's the link to the website um, is right on screen, as you can see. So this is where you can learn more about Latanya and where the books are sold, and you can also get in touch with Latanya over here. So I think this is definitely a great place to get in touch with you. So thank you so much, Latanya, for
Thank you, too.
joining.
I
It's a pleasure
appreciate you taking the time to
connecting
interview
with
me.
you. It's a pleasure connecting with you. Thank you so much, and
Yes.
I'm hoping to see you soon in probably some other interview series. And if you have upcoming books, do you have any other upcoming books?
Not as of right now, not now.
Right. So we will touch base, and hopefully we will be able to meet soon in some other time. Until then, stay safe and take care and keep doing the fantastic job that you're doing. It's a pleasure talking to you today. Thank you so much, Latanya.
Thank you, too.